this is Mrs. Fraser, and in this video we are going to be summarizing your understanding of correlation coefficient. You should have already watched the other video and responded on Canvas, so this video is just to summarize your learning and bring our thoughts together. So first, let's talk about what correlation coefficient, the purpose of it is. Correlation coefficient, the purpose is to be able to tell how strong or how weak my data is, meaning how spread apart is it? Is it closer together or is it more spread apart? And in a scatter plot, the more spread apart it is, the less reliable it is. So this correlation coefficient helps us tell how strong my data is. So we can have a perfect linear correlation at -1 or 1. And then at 0, refers to a no correlation. And this implies the association between the values is not linear. So it's all scattered, it's spread apart. Meaning I could not actually draw any sort of line to follow the data. A perfect linear correlation on the negative side would just be a straight line decrease. And a perfect linear correlation at a positive one would be a straight line positive increase. Okay, so we can have a strong linear association, a negative strong, and we can also have a positive strong. So a negative strong would be very close to linear, but not quite. So this is going to be very close to -1, between 0.5 and -1. And then we can have a weak linear association. So a weak linear association is going to be closer to 0, and my data is going to be more spread apart, but still it's going to have a decreasing pattern. My weak positive will be increasing, but spread apart. And my strong positive will be increasing, but it'll fit much snugly around my trend line. So if I place a trend line on each of these graphs, you could really see that my data fits more snugly around my strong correlation and less snugly around my weak correlation. So for correlation coefficient, the value is between -1 and 1, and again is referred to as our correlation coefficient. A negative correlation coefficient implies that one value decreases as the other value increases. That's just a fancy way to say that this is when we have a negative slope. And a positive correlation coefficient implies the values increase or decrease together. This is just another way to say this is when I have a positive slope. So the first video you watched got really fancy about talking about how to calculate each step. But if you really can just understand the difference between a strong and a weak based on how snugly it fits around your line, then you can understand correlation coefficient for what we need to understand. It's really hard to get an exact correlation coefficient. We will actually be using our calculators tomorrow to get an exact measurement, and only from a calculator could we get an exact measurement. But we should be able to at least predict what our correlation coefficient would be by looking at how snug our data is around our trend lines. Make sure that this information makes it into your notebook, and then you may begin on your homework for tonight.